Press,
Here.
Steinbrink,
Here.
Turner. Here. Walsh.
Here.
Okay, we need a motion to go into executive session to discuss some of our village real.
I move to go into executive session.
Yeah.
Can we have,
Can hear it twice?
can we have a second?
Second.
Did you say the purposes for that?
No, I got to do that, but I was just,
So don't second something.
Technology.
I didn't,
That's on.
no, we're not, we have.
Yes.
Oh. I have to read the whole motion. Are we okay to go now?
Yes.
Okay.
Deja vu.
Can you do that? I think it's a good idea because it's kind of interesting. Historic is the one. Yeah.
Okay.
Historically, we haven't got all the ARP. Right. You probably shorten the meeting. What's in your?
Yeah. Sure. The other two.
Do we have a date? Does London?
And the regular meeting. Or have the regular meetings. That's the next step. Oh.
Karen, I don't have to record this 2 seconds. We have it in the minutes. So we can go in. All right. It started and then we have to.
Are we okay? Oh, we even got Gene over here. Ready to go. Where's Craig? Chip, where's Craig? Where's Ed? Oh,
Yes.
huh?
Yes.
All right. We're going to call our meeting back to order. Next on the agenda is the election of Council President Pro Tem. Sandra?
Thank you, Mayor. For the last year and a half, I've served in the ambiguous role of Council President Pro Tem. And I say that because there's no job description. I think for every person who's served in this role, they've taken on probably the needs and responsibilities that seem most appropriate at that particular time. When I came on board, we were welcoming one new council member, and then at the election, we had 3 new council members. So creating an onboarding program to welcome and orient the new council members was one thing that I thought was important. I also worked with the mayor on clarifying the village committees, their auspice, charge, and reporting requirements. During this time, also, we successfully passed as a council, as a village, one of the most highly supported levy, conservation levy, that the village has experienced. And certainly working this past year with Chip on the comprehensive plan has taken a lot of time and support of the entire council, for which I'm very grateful. Going forward, given the fact that Chip and I have worked so closely over our term on council, I thought it only appropriate that he have an opportunity to serve in this ambiguous role. Obviously, he has a lot of talents and expertise to bring to the job, and he already has some ideas about how to further integrate this body, so that we can team even better going forward. So I'm still here. I still have my role of being what I've heard, kind of the diplomat or compromiser. But I'm very happy to nominate Chip Allwater for Council President Pro Tem.
Second.
Atchon,
Yes.
Allward,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
It wouldn't have been appropriate for me to abstain? I don't know what you do. No, okay.
Chip, we need you to come up here for oath of office. Wait a minute. I was instructed to use this so we can hear. I, Chip Allwater,
I, Chip Allwater,
do hereby swear
do hereby swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
and that I will honestly,
and that I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
discharge my duties as President Pro Tem,
discharge my duties as President Pro Tem,
to which I have been elected
to which I've been elected
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability.
and to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Now you get to sign. Here.
Kind of here.
Mhm. Thank you. Next is mayor appointments to administrative offices.
Move to accept.
Okay.
We have a second.
Second.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, next is mayoral appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. On planning and zoning, Nancy has withdrawn. The rest of them are as listed.
Move to accept.
Second.
I have a question. Jamie, is Jamie Carricle on this one?
Yes.
Pardon me?
yes, yes,
Jamie
he is.
Carricle,
Carricker.
for the
He's here as a matter of fact.
Gates Land Conservancy. Would it be better to have him be, I think he should be on the board of the Land Conservancy for sure. Would it be better to have him be a board appointee rather than a mayoral appointee, since that's an independent organization?
Well, the Land Conservancy was set up that we have, I believe it is five.
You have a third of a board.
Right. Okay, so he's one of our nominees.
Right, but the optics make it look a little bit like it's an entity of the village then, as opposed to an independent entity. He's probably going to be the next, following Nat, he's probably going to be the next president.
Well, I guess, as someone who is a mayoral appointee and who's been very active in the Land Conservancy, it feels to me like we would, if that were to take place, and let's say mayoral appointees were not able to serve in a leadership capacity, we'd be cutting off a third of the prospective candidates who could serve very ably in that executive capacity.
Yeah, I don't see it as a conflict. but
Yeah.
Do you, Todd?
No, it's
I
not.
don't think it's a conflict. I think it's an optics issue.
Okay,
So we had a motion and a second for the Planning and Zoning Commission appointment,
all of it.
all of it.
Okay.
I was.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes,
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
thank you.
A second, quick question, just not to my vote. The very last item is Real Estate Charter Board. What the heck is that?
Say that again.
The last item in this, in this section is called the Real Estate Charter Board. What's that?
That's the real estate board that Sean
It's
and
called the Real
Warren.
Estate Committee, isn't it?
Aren't there both?
I'm being pernickety.
There's a charter board and then there's also a real estate committee, is there not? I thought,
well, there were.
I wasn't
there
aware
were
of that
two.
fact. I
There
wasn't
were
aware.
two.
There's a committee and a
And
subcommittee.
it's
both
committee and a
called Real
subcommittee.
Estate.
Right.
It's not called a charter board. Whatever. I don't even know what a charter board is.
Well, we can take that out.
Okay, good.
Real estate board and for term ending.
Council, committee, Real Estate Committee.
You got that, Beth? Okay, next is Land Conservancy report, Nat. Yes. Welcome.
Yeah.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, let me start by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to address council and Mayor Snyder about what's happening at the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. I'm going to start by just talking about 5 or 6 different aspects of what we've been doing since the last report which was done in August. So it's going to be an update from that August report. In 2022, we did not acquire any new properties or easements, which is not unusual. These opportunities tend to come in cycles. They're opportunistic and nothing came up last year. So there were no land transactions. In terms of stewardship, which is one of our main responsibilities, we completed the inspections, the formal reports and the photographs on 58 preserves. And that's something that we have to do every single year. It's a big effort, and that was completed for every preserve by the end of December. We, in September, we mowed the Sherman Road Preserve, and we had a group of Hawkins students come and do some invasive species removal on that preserve. And we also used it in October to have 4 separate nature tours that was organized by Sandra Turner. And we had about 45 people come to participate in that. And the speakers, the educators actually, talked about invasive species. They talked about bees and also about the diseases we're seeing in some of our trees, birch trees. There's a birch leaf disease that's cropped up in the last few years. And we have the emerald ash borer disease, which has destroyed most of our ash trees in Gates Mills. Moving down to fundraising, we had a record year in fundraising. We raised, at the time I wrote the report, $31,000 in membership fees. At the end of December, that was $36,000 in membership fees, which is an all-time record, at least as far back as 15 years. So we really had a lot of support from the community, which is certainly very gratifying for the board of directors. That came from 53 participants at the end of November, 61 at the end of December, compared to 105 last year. So we almost increased our participation by 50% in terms of number of people donating.
You said 61. Did you mean 161?
161, yes. Thank you, Jim. We, at the end of December, we received our second tranche of levy funds, 48,000, which brought the total to 100 and, is that me or somebody else? That is me, excuse me. It brought the total levy funds received to 110,000. And that's the 50% of the funds that Gates Mills Conservancy gets. Village gets the other 50%. Talking about governance, on October 19th, we had our annual meeting, and it was attended by 45 individuals, of which I think 14 had never been to a Gates Mills Conservancy event before. We elected Dr. Peter Weist as our new director, and that brings our total director count to 15. And we renewed the elections on 3 directors, Leah Whidden, Nancy McGinnis, and Cindy Zenz. We also elected new officers, Jamie Character as vice president, Cindy Zenz as treasurer, Rob Galloway as secretary, and myself as president. And at the end of the meeting, after the outgoing president, Rob Galloway, completed his comments, we had a presentation about tree canopies presented by Eric Carlson, who is a science teacher at University School. We typically do a strategic plan every 5 years. And the last time we did that in full was in 2015. We updated it a little bit in 2018. So we've started a new strategic plan update that will be comprehensive. And we had the first meeting in December. I expect that we will have a copy of that strategic plan to the council probably by June or July this year. And that will lay out how we see the next 5 years in terms of activities and priorities for the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. Let me turn to financials. As of mid-November, our accountants, our independent accountants, Burchek and DeCellis, had completed our review of our 2021 financial statements. And they also prepared Form 990, which is return of organization exempt from income tax. And that we have to file every year with the Internal Revenue Service, which we did in the middle of November. Looking at where the statement of financials was at the end of November, We had revenues of about 55,000 compared to a full year budget of 25,000. Expenses of 23,000 compared to a full year budget of about 29,000. And a surplus of 32,000 compared to a full year budget of a deficit of 3,000. So we are substantially ahead of where we expected to be. The reason that revenues were so high is because of the receipts on the memberships that I talked about earlier. And we also received a bequest from the Ann Dickinson Trust for 22,000. So we expected to end the year with a surplus of about 25,000. And that's what we have ended the year with. So I would tell you the Conservancy from a standpoint of finances is in great shape as we enter 2023. In terms of cash reserves, we have a total of $820,000 in cash made up of 3 accounts: operating funds, levy funds, and stewardship funds. And against that, we have a note for the Clark Preserve of $273,000. So the net cash that we have available in the Conservancy is $574,000. And that is not as much as it sounds like, because we are obligated, as you may recall, to have $700,000 in endowment reserves by the end of 2026. And what that means is that from this point forward, we can only spend about $350,000 on land acquisitions, whether we spend it next month or in 2025. So the last item I want to mention is that Sandra Turner and I had a meeting with the mayor last week, and we are starting the process of developing a plan to tackle the tree canopy in Gates Mills. And this is very early stages, but the thought process here is that the Conservancy can act as a facilitator, bringing expertise that we don't have in the Conservancy, and certainly the council doesn't have it. And we're going to try to develop a long-term strategy with that expertise we bring in to see if we can take care of the canopy, which is incidentally, it's declined 5% in the last 5 years to about 70% coverage now. And some of that's because of the emerald ash borer problem. We're losing most of our ash trees. Some of it's because of development. And some of it's because of this new disease that you may be hearing about. It's called beech leaf disease. And looks like our beech trees are at risk at this point as well. So that concludes my remarks for the formal report. But I'm happy to entertain any questions if you have any.
Nat, your comment about the, 574,000 balance at this point. And then your comment about the 700,000 for the stewardship by the end of 2026, leaving the funds that you will get in over the next 4 years, including 2023, from the levy gives you think about 350,000 to spend on acquisitions.
That's what we would expect, right?
Right.
Net of any fundraising we were able to do on top of that.
Right. So I guess I just like the record to reflect also that the operating agreement between the village and Land Conservancy encourages the Land Conservancy to come to the village if it finds it needs more than the 350,000. We've ended up the year in the Village Land Conservation Fund with 111,000. We will get, we're going to spend some of that in 2023 on some culvert work related to the stormwater runoff, all consistent with the levy. But in general, the money is, first of all, only used for the levy purposes, obviously, in that fund. And so I don't think we should be losing track that there's another 330,000 to come in in 24 through 26, the 111,000 we already start with. So some people seem to take this and try to claim that because of the levy, that the Land Conservancy has been totally hamstrung on any ability to do any kind of an acquisition. And I think that you guys have 800,000 plus to consider spending over the next 4 years, which I think is more than plenty.
Well, Chip, I'm delighted that if we bring a good project to council, you're going to be helping us to make it happen. So that's good news. Thank you. Anything else?
Couple of observations, Nat, if I may. The first one is that there is a good deal of confusion, I think, in the village as to what you have to do to be a member of the Land Conservancy. When we did our survey for the comprehensive plan, roughly 600 people said they were members of the Land Conservancy, which of course can't possibly be right.
Mhm.
So they don't know what that means exactly.
Right.
So I think there needs to be a good deal more clarity on what membership means, particularly if I am a member, what rights do I have to information and access and all the rest of it? I'm very concerned that the governance of the Land Conservancy is not very transparent.
Well,
In terms of policy derivation, operational plans, fundraising plans, all those things. I realize real estate transactions need to be, under some certain circumstances, kept secret. And you could have an executive session provision, just as the council does. But I think there are other issues, particularly like policy, particularly when there are some ambiguities in your policy, need to be a lot more transparent than they are. How you do that with a newsletter or what, I don't know. I came to the dinner. It was a dinner, not an annual meeting. It was a dinner in October, I think.
no, it was just an annual meeting.
It was an annual meeting, but there was no discussion of candidates, no discussion of policy. It was pretty much a preordained event. And as a member, I would welcome more conversation.
Well, thank you for those comments, David. And I agree that there is some confusion about what constitutes membership in the Conservancy. In terms of our bylaws, you have to take out a membership to be an official member of the Conservancy. The fact that you pay taxes doesn't make you an automatic member. Now, we could certainly take a look at the bylaws, but to address your immediate concern about transparency, we're going to be having these meetings with the council twice a year now. So there will be lots of opportunity for conversation back and forth. And I hope that we will be doing co-projects together, such as this tree canopy initiative. I also should have mentioned that we have initiated a newsletter. Our second one came out when was it? September 14th. It went to 740 households in Gates Mills. It focused this newsletter on the river corridor, talking about projects and history of that corridor, which is one of the key scenic arteries going through Gates Mills. And we can use that newsletter, and we'll use it to help people understand the difference between membership and the fact that you contribute taxes to the Conservancy and any other types of governance issues that you think need to be illuminated. So thank you for that comment. I think we can do better.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Right. Thank you very much.
By the way, I think this, in my 6 or 7 years on council, I know that the report was made last summer, but I don't recall getting one in January in many prior years. So thank you, Nat, for doing what the Land Conservancy.
Okay, next on the agenda is minutes from the council meeting of December 13th, 2022.
Move to approve.
I just have a quick question, Beth and Janet. How did this new format work out? I know we discussed this at the last council meeting with the timestamps on here. I mean, has this been an improvement in terms of putting this together?
Well, I think it's made it easier on Janet, and I guess I look to you for comment on that.
Yeah, listen, I think it's great. I think there's enough information in here to If I feel like something was misstated or I want to learn more, I know exactly where to go on the YouTube with the timestamp. So I think this format's great. Just my comment.
There was a lot of legislation or it would have been shorter.
Yeah. I wasn't present, so reading the minutes in conjunction with the video was very helpful.
You had some spare time. So we had
Second,
a second, okay. Gaton,
Abstain.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Abstain.
Steinbrink.
yes.
Turner, Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is pay ordinance 1269 for $1,352,518.82.
Move to approve.
Second,
Gaton,
Comment quickly. This is much bigger than usual. The monthly version is usually 400,000 or 500,000. This is a big one.
The
And I
road
know
program
there was
is
a
in
check
there.
There's a check for Roniak, which we're going to be talking about later, which was
Yeah.
enormous. So it's a big one.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. End of year.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
yes.
Turner. Yes. Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is treasurer's report. Steve?
Good evening. The financial statements for the village were provided to the mayor, the clerk and council in advance of the January council meeting. The village ended the fiscal year in a very solid financial position. We generated a modest surplus in line with our intent to operate the village on a balanced budget basis. We have good liquidity and we have no debt. The village was able to continue the level of police, service, fire, and administrative services as planned and budgeted for 22 throughout the year, despite the economic uncertainties in the markets and persistent inflation. Further, we made good progress in tackling the road program, having completed year one of a 6-year program to bring all the roads up to a good condition. We did benefit from the hybrid work environment as the work from home villagers are paying taxes to the village as their work city rather than to other municipalities. Municipal income tax revenue is also benefiting by a subtle shift in wage earners moving into the village and replacing villagers who paid less in tax. These are all items that we have talked about throughout the year. As to the numbers, the general fund revenue for the 12 months was $6,450,000. The month of December included $45,000 of municipal income tax revenue for the year. For the year, income tax revenue totaled $3,110,000, favorable to the full year budget by over $1 million. Real estate taxes were $2,436,000, $72,000, or 3% above prior year. Other source revenue was $788,000, $90,000 less than prior year due to two items. One, a non-recurring Bureau of Workers' Comp refund in 2021, and two, less rental income at the Mills buildings due to tenant movement and payment timing. In December of 22, the village did receive reimbursement from the county of $100,000 for the 21 road program. All other source revenue lines were reasonably in line with the budgeted amounts, except for fines and costs, which were below budget as the camera enforcement program was not operational. We continue to work with GATSO and Lyndhurst Court to operationalize the billing and collection procedures. Expenditures for the 12 months were $6,005,000, $593,000 above the prior year. As has been reported in prior reports, this overage is due to four main items. One, higher personnel costs, which were $233,000, higher legal and professional fees of $89,000, higher EMS costs of $110,000, and a service department vehicle of $90,000. For the month of December, departmental operating costs were $469,000, a fairly typical month. For the year, the police department costs were $1,706,000, under budget of $1,790,000. The fire department costs were $658,000, right on budget of $655,000. And the service department costs were $1,745,000, slightly unfavorable to the budget of $1,705,000. Administration operating costs were $791,000, $41,000 over budget. Legal and professional fees accounted for $26,000 of this, as did the tax collection expenses, which increased because of tax revenue, higher tax revenue receipts. Just wanted to say congratulations to the 4 department heads who brought their numbers in very close to, if not favorable to budget. So thank you to the 4 of you, and of course to the mayor. For the full year, the village ended the year with a general fund operating surplus of $444,000. We had approached the year with a break-even mentality, and obviously, given the benefit of the work from home income tax revenues, we certainly benefited by that and ended up with a sizable surplus. General fund cash balance at December 31st was 7.8 million compared to 7.4 million at the beginning of the year. Other funds, the village is required to maintain other special purpose funds by regulation or statute. Those amounts, cash in those funds amounted to $1.4 million. The 23 budget was approved and, the 23 budget for expenses and revenues has been previously reviewed. As we enter 23, it's worth mentioning a few highlights. Number one, it was determined that our compensation levels for the varying levels of positions were competitive and that a 4% increase would be appropriate for 23. 2, we've developed a balanced budget of $6,050,000 of revenue and $6,032,000 of expenditures. 3, we've increased expenditures on roads to accomplish the road program over a 6-year program period. And 4, we expect to undertake the Mayfield Road culvert replacement this year at a cost of nearly $500,000 through grants received and other revenue sources. Long-range planning financial schedules with the 22 books closed. The long-range financial schedules developed in late 20 will now be updated with the 5-year period 2023 to 27. We will update the 22 numbers with the actual full year 22 numbers. The financial picture is good, and we'll present this to council at the next meeting. The report has been published to the village website, I think around midday today. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to fill them now or later. We did get this out in advance of the meeting. Charlie made the point last meeting to perhaps have it out the day before if possible. I think we did a pretty good job. It depends on when the calendar falls and when the data comes to me. It usually, I think we got the last bit of data on Saturday night, so not really possible to do it much sooner than this turnaround. So overall, a good financial year for the village. We won't take credit for the work from home income. It's fortunate that we're the beneficiary of that, but good to have everything else pretty much on budget.
A quick question, if I may. The change of scope charge from Roniak, the $250,000, cannot be in your 2022 numbers because we haven't paid that yet. Has it been incorporated into the budget for 2023? It's got to appear somewhere.
It was not incorporated. We have a road program in 23 of a rather sizable amount. That 230,000, if it's approved by council, will initially come off of what we approved in 23 for 23 expenditures on the road.
That means you'll have less scope in your 2023 program than you originally imagined.
That's perhaps true. I would suggest, since we don't do the road program until the second half of the year, we see how the first 6 months of the year turn out. Perhaps we still can accomplish the year 2 program as planned.
A simple man might say, well, this is an extra charge we weren't expecting. We ought to add that to the 2023 numbers, at least as we do our projections. You may want to change the budget, but I think it's a large amount of money that's appeared from nowhere in my head, and needs to be acknowledged one way or another. And we can't just assume it away. It needs to be part of a real discussion about the road program.
Well, we'll be showing negative variances then for the first, which we may do for the first 6 months until we, I'll say, earn our way out of that. But yep.
We'll talk about that a little further. I'm not sure at what point, because we've had conversations with Chris about looking forward at our roads and how to put a provision in for this kind of thing. If I could just make one side comment, I will actually make 2 comments. I have been a stickler through the years that we try to get our expenditures in the same year at which we incurred the expense. And I am absolutely livid that this bill is coming into January when it could have been done in December. And
That's what I'm
instead,
trying to say.
now, when you look at last year, had it been in December, not that it wasn't an overrun, it was a huge surprise when they got into the construction. we had $1 million more in revenue than we expected. And we turned around and had a surprise on the roads that we didn't expect. So you might argue that, you know, that you do get surprises. What's happening now is because it's in 23, and I very much agree with you, we've now got to wrestle with it compared to the expectation we've set up. So, but I just cannot caution enough that it just screws everything up when we incur all the work in one year and then get the bill the next year. So this bill came in December. So.
One last point.
It was to the parties that were negotiating the bill. It could have been submitted in December.
Even so, you could make a provision if you knew you were going to have an overrun, but there was still some toing and froing around the exact number. That would get it into the right year.
The provisions are non-cash, so
Your
our
cash
cash are
accounting.
literally cash.
Primary responsibility for this. I was negotiating with the contractor on final quantities and a number of things that were assigned to correct line items, all in an effort to increase their bill. It took a couple months to negotiate that out with them. We lowered what the final bill was by about $50,000. In retrospect, as I was negotiating with them, it probably would have been more prudent to come in with an estimated change order instead of the final numbers and do that earlier. And then do some sort of a credit change order or some smaller.
Yeah,
investment.
yeah.
But Dave and I have already discussed getting the road program out much earlier this year. So this will not happen again.
And if I could add one little comment too, what you have to understand, it's an immense amount of paperwork that we're verifying. Okay, so even if we get billed, we're looking at every single delivery ticket of material.
Understood.
So I'm checking to make sure if he says he delivered 100,000 tons of stone, that we accept that 100,000.
Okay, that's
So it's
excellent.
an extremely amount of time that Chris and I are spending on this to verify that, as Chris said, if he's owed 150, he did 150 of work.
Yeah.
It's not just
Well, and I wouldn't want you to knock 1 minute out of that. I was told that you actually did finalize all that before December 31.
I didn't. I still had some quantities I needed to verify.
Oh, all right. Well, that's new information. So,
But
All
we'll
right.
talk about that later.
Is there also another comment about if it happened to us this year? Do we need to worry about whether it'll happen again? Maybe something about the way we're doing our estimates and signing the contract.
I don't think we
should
ever had
expect an
anything
overrun.
like this before, have we?
Having perhaps a more robust contingency allowance in the contract, in the event we run into this situation in the future, we've got a provision in the contract to pay for it, using a larger amount of work, specing some of this stuff on the front end, and then we don't need it. The other thing we have to keep in mind is we're starting with the worst roads. So if we have the worst
Absolutely.
roads, we're more prone to run into surprises as opposed to working our way into better roads when we're working on them, where we're less likely to be surprised by these things.
Particularly since the scope of your program was based on surface observation.
Correct.
And it's on the bad roads where you get the problems below the surface.
We made two-
Until you open her up, you don't know.
and that's the problem.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
You can't open it up and then say, oh, let's close it back up. So.
Exactly.
The only reason I'm asking is because it's a significant, we're doing a long-term financial forecast that's going to be presented next month. And it's a fairly significant component of our expenditure. So if we're going to have a repeat, we need to, include that in our plan.
And if I could just, one real quick comment, and I sent Chip this email, I'm trying to, and we can tie in with Dave and say, my recommendation was obviously in order to pay this bill, initially we take it out of the 2023 budget. And to what you said, it may mean less work, but not necessarily.
No,
may get some
we don't know.
fantastic prices,
Mhm.
and now we've only got to make up $100,000.
Mhm.
We're 10 days into a new budget, and give me some time to kind of
Okay, fine.
work on this.
My other comment is that I think looking back at the record, late last year, we made council was promised a long-range financial projection in September. Then it was October. then it was December, then it was January. Now it's going to be February. And I think the council needs to become familiar with this long-range projection because I think it's a very difficult thing to talk about. And we haven't had a proper discussion of our long-range financial forecast for a long time. And so I regret that it's been so slow. And I think this year, 2023, we have to find a way to accelerate it so that we're not grappling with the long-range plan after we've done the budget. We should be doing the long-range plan before we do them. That's pretty elementary corporate finance. So I just hope next year we can accelerate the process. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Next is mayor's report. I want to read a letter from Blair Whidden. He sent this January 2nd. Dear Karen, must not let the season pass without noting how well the crews did in keeping our roads clear during the holiday storm. We drove through Moreland Hills, Western Geauga County, and Hunting Valley, none compared to the high standard set by our crews in our Gates Mills Service Department. They are dedicated and talented group of professionals. Congratulations to all. Happy New Year, Blair. So that was very nice. They did do a good job, other than ODOT did on Mayfield Road, which was a disaster. Village had a lot of winners on the lights, which will be in the, I think Jean's put them online and it'll come out in the next pink sheet. And that is all I have right now. Next is clerk's report.
Nothing to report.
Okay, committee reports.
I'm going to report on the comprehensive plan. We had a very successful meeting last evening. 18 of the 25 advisory committee members were there to review some aspects of 3 of the goals. Prior to the meeting last night, the members completed a checklist that was provided by our consultant. And in doing that checklist, they had an opportunity to indicate objectives and strategies that they agreed with, disagreed with, or wanted more discussion. So out of that, we were able to narrow what was needed to be discussed. And we've got a plan for the next few meetings coming up, as to which of the goals are going to be discussed. We changed the format based on some feedback from the advisory committee. And so we had 2 groups, one that Chip facilitated and one that I facilitated. And we really worked, with them to go through each of the items from the checklist on these 3 goals. So I think the good thing for me that came out of that is, the group is engaged. People felt like they were heard, like they had some opportunity, for discussion. We came up with some really great ideas. There are some things that, again, need to continue to be reworked. But in the coming weeks or months, for the next couple of meetings, we'll go into other goals and kind of wrestle with them, so to speak. But again, there's a lot of cohesion as a result of checking in through this checklist. And again, a lot of engagement and excitement actually about moving forward. We're putting on hold till a little later further discussion about the village center and about housing, because we had a lot of debate about that, and we've just tabled it temporarily to work on some other issues that we felt we could get some better, agreement and consensus, and then build on that by going back to the other issues that were a little bit more contentious. So any questions, comments?
An observation from last night, I listened. It was very difficult from the audience to follow 2 boisterous conversations at the same time. And it would have been easier, I think, if the 2 groups could have actually been in separate rooms for the groups themselves. And then you would come back and report to the audience. I just thought it was it was like being in a restaurant. And I couldn't follow any part of the conversation. I could hear comments, but not conversation. So
Chip's
give some
group
thought
was
to that.
especially loud. We were,
Yeah, they're noisy.
we used our inside voice.
get the hell out of here. And the other group was particularly quiet.
Yeah.
And we had conversations going on in the audience too. So it was like
Yeah,
a fancy
that's a good,
restaurant.
that's a
right?
good point. Yeah. And
Um,
somebody did mention that it was a little hard to.
Yeah,
hard
but
to-
on the other hand, it was a real progress from previous meetings. I've been to them all. I think Michael's been to all the advisory committee meetings, and this was a distinct improvement.
Okay.
So we're in the right direction.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
do think, David, I was concerned because obviously some people came to sit and it's a working meeting. If people want to observe it, that's their choice, but it's not meant for audience participation. The results of the committee will be what's published. So I don't know how to communicate I went up to a couple of people to say, you might find this pretty boring because it's just going to be small table discussion. And so it's a workshop for the tables for the advisory committee themselves. So I don't know what, if you have thoughts, but it's not that we're opening it up to the public. That's not what the
No,
workshops
I have
are.
seen,
So-
I have some ideas and I'll share them with you in due course. It's fine.
Okay,
That's no problem.
okay.
Hey, Sandra, do we have a rough timeline on when this is ballpark wrapping up and council can expect recommendations?
Good question. We're anticipating, well, we had the January meeting. We'll probably have our next one early in February, one in March, and the next town hall meeting perhaps later in April, and then bringing the report back to council after that. So it's a longer process than we originally anticipated, but we had a lot of sources of information and input and spent a lot of time grappling with it. So,
Okay, thanks.
So the sequence of events, standard will be, a draft report will be prepared by the advisory committee. It will be presented in a town hall for public discussion before it's finalized.
Right.
Following that discussion, there will be adjustments made if any are appropriate.
mhm.
Then it will come to council for approval. Is that how it's going to work?
The last part, coming to council, coming to the mayor, coming to council, I'm not sure the exact order, of that.
Well,
but
at some
after
point
the
it will come
town-
in front of council, right?
Right.
For
Yes.
discussion.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. As long as that's the sequence, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
So that raises an interesting question. What are we approving, Sandra?
think
I'm not
it's more
sure
like
you
you're
are
accepting.
approving. I
Accepting.
believe.
Okay.
Accepting.
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't
that
know.
makes sense. Okay,
I
accepting.
I
Okay.
think that's a little bit of a deeper question that our law director may need to help on. You don't have to do that tonight, Todd, but just once that report is presented, I don't know that we're, accepting a carte blanche or we're saying, well, this one we accept, this one we don't. I don't know. It's a committee that was formed to
Okay.
present some, but I don't know, Todd, we're not the first community to do this, so I assume there's more to what we do with the report once it's given to us. Is that a fair statement?
That's true.
So at some point, good, thank you.
As far as engagement is concerned, council members, I believe, have behaved diligently in terms of not interfering with the process. That was a commitment we all took when this process kicked off. And I'm very uncomfortable as a council person not seeing this until the very end of the process. I'd have thought at some point council needs to be discussing where the process stands because we do have a legitimate input. We haven't made that input yet. So I think there needs to be a real opportunity for council to discuss the document while it's in draft form. I don't know quite when,
Mhm.
in order that we can superimpose some of our views onto it if that's appropriate. And I think around the table, we have a lot of strong views on the issues. It's been very difficult for me to keep quiet in this process. And I think others maybe feel the same way. So I think council owes it to the village to make a contribution to this plan before it's finalized, before it goes to a town hall meeting. Yeah, but I just
Well-
want you to think about it, that's all.
And I'll take the other
my-
side of that argument. I
Yeah.
don't think council's fingerprint should be anywhere on this process whatsoever. I think this was done by the residents, for the residents to have a chance to put their fingerprints and their input into the process without being circumvented or changed by members of council or otherwise. And I think the discussion will begin when the recommendations come. for acceptance into council? And then what do we do with what the residents have told us, I think is where the work really begins on this project for council.
Right.
I will just come back at that if I may. I think that's a naive interpretation of what's going on. I think it's important that council answers the question, has this process been conducted properly? Are these in fact the answers and the ideas, the observations the villagers have expressed? We've seen them all. I've seen them all. And I want to see if it's a balanced report based upon what I saw in those meetings. I've been to almost every public meeting. I've read every document that's been given to the advisory committee. So I have some views about the integrity of the process. And I think you're saying the process is perfect.
Oh, I'm not-
Therefore, the product.
No,
I think you are.
nothing's perfect. I mean, you got 27 people who are in the village, who all have very strong opinions on things. And I think the notion that the advisory committee is going to be bulldozed or bullied or influenced by some people, 27 people, I don't find that to carry much weight.
I'm older than you and more cynical.
So.
I think the answer on this one comes down to if we have to accept the report in full and vote it up or down, then I'm inclined to go along with David. If we're able to accept in parts and make modifications, then I'm more inclined to go with Craig.
My take is on it that, we accept it and then we go through it as a council and see what we will or will not go forward with. And some of it may be for a later date. I mean, you kind of put it on the shelf and we don't address it till you need it. And I think some of the things might be
Mhm.
5 years out, 10 years out.
Well, and I guess for two things. One, Chip and my role are really to be the managers of the process. We've tried diligently to stay outside of
Tried, understand.
tried and been successful in, not giving our opinions. We've been very scrupulous about that and actually had, some concerns about actually facilitating to small group discussions and had to be very clear with one another about how we were doing this. And, you have been at all the meetings or most of the meetings, you've looked at all the documents and kudos to you. That would be something good for other council members to do. But having said that, I'm also, I take exception with you saying that no one on council has interfered or expressed their opinion with regard to this process.
In public meetings, we haven't.
Public, private, is there a difference?
Yeah, there is a difference. Public, this is a public process.
It's not very transparent if you're not honest in both places, public and private.
What are you suggesting?
You know what I'm saying.
I don't know what you're suggesting. So I'm asking.
You've influenced the process with some comments that you've made to villagers, both in writing and orally. So I just take exception with you saying there's not been influence by the council
So
in
we
this
try-
process.
We've tried very hard to stay out of it, and we have.
You've done 2 mailings to the community, so don't tell me that you haven't tried to have some sort of influence.
Yeah, we're just trying to summarize the facts.
No, you haven't. The way you can present facts certain ways and you can present them certain other ways.
Take our
You tend to
letter,
present them in a way that clearly indicates what your preference is.
take our letter, pick out things that are.
That's what we've heard from advisory committee members that
Well,
they were
let's see,
trying to
let's
be
see what they're
influenced.
talking about. I do hope at the public meeting, the town hall meeting, that council people will be able to ask questions.
So can I ask a question then, Sandra? You mentioned that you were tabling the village center and housing. So can you just summarize quickly which of the goals you are focusing on?
So last night we focused on goal A, which is harmony with nature. I remember just remembering them. And one was the rural character. A was rural character of the village. 2 was harmony with nature. And then I think it was F that we focused on connectivity, which had to do with trails, biking trails, pedestrian trails, bridle trails between and within village neighborhoods. In certain aspects of that, because certain parts of that where there was agreement. The next meeting, we're going to focus on amenities and services. And one aspect of housing, which has to do with, incentives for
Existing
renovating
housing.
Existing housing. And we do want to kind of limit each meeting to just a couple of topics because it's, can be overwhelming.
Thank you. That's great.
Any other committee reports?
I've got a few here. I'll start with the safety cameras, kind of a good news, bad news story. Excuse me, good news, bad news story. The Lyndhurst Municipal Court continues working with the case management vendor on pricing and timeline on the data integration with Census Gatso. Obviously, this has taken longer than what we had expected, but when it comes down to it, Ohio is the only state that has this Supreme Court requirement that these cameras be run through the courts. No other state does this besides Ohio. And so it has been a little difficult getting the court's vendor to kind of have an incentive on moving forward on this. But I do think we're getting close to at least having a scope of work outlined, what that pricing looks like for the court, and then be able to have some dates to be able to share at the next council meeting on when those might be preliminary up and running. On the good news front, construction on the camera foundations themselves, all that has been approved, and construction should start in the next few weeks there. The real estate committee, the committee has recently received and is evaluating a formal proposal for the former Cindy Halley space as well as Burton Court. And we will have an update there at the February council meeting. And planning and zoning, we had a spirited discussion at the last planning and zoning meeting regarding solar panels. I'm not sure everyone's aware, but currently in the village, solar panels that face the street are prohibited. And that was passed in 2014. We understand that over the last 8 to 10 years, the solar panel industry has changed significantly in the looks of the panels. They don't have the silver or white arrays in between them anymore. They're all black now. They're much less reflective than what they used to be. However, in the last 6 months, we have now had 2 residents come to planning and zoning seeking a variance for solar panels that face the street. One was on Old Mill. It was a unique situation because of the way the house sits. Both sides of the house face the street, and there really was nowhere else to put them. The other resident that came through, it's basically visible driving down River Road and would be visible. So we decided to table the discussion. I think this is probably another matter for council to discuss. It's been 8 or 10 years since the last time we looked at this. If it really is council's intention to, effectively prohibit people from putting solar panels on their roofs in Northeast Ohio. Anybody's house front of their house that faces the street or southern or western exposure faces the street effectively isn't able to put solar panels up. So I think that's probably something that needs to be discussed for council. We did actually refer that back to Architectural Review Board as well, because I think it's likely a matter of aesthetics when this was passed in 2014. I was not around when this was originally passed. I think it's probably the same reason that you don't see HVAC condensers and all the other sorts of technical equipment in the front of somebody's house. It's typically hidden on the side or on the back of the house that can't be seen from the street. So just some comments there of some things to be expecting. We do have a rough draft of something that we had been working on earlier in the summer that we'll pick back up. So something will likely be coming to council on solar panels at some point in the next few months here. Also wanted to make, with respect to planning and zoning, a comment regarding Nancy. I've spent the last 7 years working with Nancy on planning and zoning. During that time, I've appreciated her perspective and approach to finding solutions that address the need of residents. I may not have always agreed with her on issues, but I understood where she was coming from and her desire to please residents. Her legal background and insights and love of the village will be missed.
Thank you.
Could I make a quick comment? I read the minutes of the P and Z meeting. Very interesting. There was a very interesting topographical area. You were talking about chickens. And the conversation moved to rooster.
But the minutes initially said roaster.
Oh, yes,
One of the
we
people in
did
the
change
committee
that.
must have been
Yes, yes, yes.
So-
That did get changed.
But somebody caught it. which is
Yes,
good.
yes,
I think the rooster's happy about it.
yes.
Right. Could I do one on the school liaison committee, please?
Okay,
You ready? 2 minutes. We've got a little video here for you. We had an organizational meeting yesterday morning. 10 of the 13 committee members were present. It is actually the biggest committee in the whole artillery of committees we have. And we have 2 chairmen to keep control. It's a very powerful group of people. And there were 10 of us there yesterday, and we had a sort of organizational meeting. And in line with the notion of trying to communicate and collaborate with the schools, we've appointed individuals to be liaison with a particular school, specifically GMES, the middle school, the high school, and the environmental center. And we're organizing visits for the committee to each of those locations to see what goes on and how it's done and all the rest of it. Sometime in the next couple of months. It isn't organized yet. We've also got volunteers to make sure we always have the Mayfield City School Board meetings covered as well. The idea being to find out what we can and report back through the committee to council as to what's going on. We talked about the Mayfield City School. They had a satisfaction survey for the entire community. They surveyed 300 people by telephone, of whom 25 lived in Gates Mills, which is sort of proportionate to a relative population. And the school district releases a video on a pretty regular basis, roughly monthly, called the Mayfield Minute. I brought one along, and it summarizes the results of the survey they conducted in September by telephone, as I said, asking the community for their thoughts on Mayfield City Schools. Run it. Thank you.
You've always wanted to say that, right?
Yeah.
Run the video.
Wow, look at this. It takes a little more than a minute, actually, so. Once it starts.
2:16.
Yeah, so they lie. Can you go back to the beginning? So a very quick observation. Clearly, the community in total there's probably 24,000 voting adults in the district overall. of which 2,000 live here in Gates Mills. But of the population overall, they're very comfortable with their school district, very proud of it, and believe it's excellent. The survey that we did as part of our comprehensive plan was less enthusiastic, but still relatively comfortable with Mayfield City Schools. So both the quality and value for money through the taxes that we pay. So that's where people think Mayfield City Schools is, and that's the way the superintendent believes it to be. And it's a good story. And I don't understand why we have so few people in our village not going to Mayfield City Schools. And we need to find out why that is. So that's it for today. We'll have another meeting in a month's time following these field visits, and we'll report back whenever we have something to tell you that's interesting.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Sounds like it was a great meeting.
It was very good. Very good.
David, just a sidebar, when you commented about the long-range plan or the comprehensive plan feedback, that was largely from the outside perspectives in talking to realtors about what they're feeling or hearing from prospective buyers. And it took a while to draw it out. First of all, realtors aren't going to give you their own opinion. They're trying to be, agnostic to the whole question. But essentially, it was a perception issue from somebody that just has heard vibes that there are other schools that are better. It wasn't, based on any data or anything like that. It was strictly a perception. And so it raises part of the question of marketing and how it's presented. I thought that was very encouraging. And it was interesting to hear that guy say that it's as good as he sees, from a lot of those kind of surveys. So it's more, is there more that the school district could be doing from a perception to outside of Mayfield? That's what, at least what I gleaned
They're
from
better
that.
situated to do it than we are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, my reference to our survey was the survey results, not the outside perspectives. It was literally the survey.
Oh, okay, good point. Okay. Yeah.
And of course, our survey covered GMES, but Mayfield City Schools didn't need to find out what people felt about GMES from the entire community, so that it wasn't mentioned.
Okay. Any other reports? Okay, we're going to move on. Police Department, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Please should receive a copy of my report.
It's not on.
I got it now. Members of council, thank you. Everybody should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have. I wanted to be sure to mention in my report there, you see the first item there that after about 8-month project, our BWC, those are our body worn cameras, are now in service. So all of our officers are now equipped with those. Grant funding paid for the majority of that. There are some expenses that it doesn't include, such as the support, storage fees and whatnot. So but we believe it's good. Certainly there's going to be some evidentiary value from that. We believe it'll definitely improve transparency, and we also believe that it'll reduce liability or minimize liability to the officers in the village long term. So we're happy to get that done. Our officers are very much supportive of it. They like having those in their interface with our dash cams. So we just got those rolling about 2 weeks ago. So it was a big push by the governor's office, for those who may remember that. And we went to part of that, in fact, down in Euclid when they had the the press conference with that. So, but we're thrilled that they were finally up and running in the service. Some hiccups with that, but everything's up and running, and we're in good shape there.
Chief, it came up actually in last night's meeting with the advisory committee. And something I probably don't pay much attention to, but the specific comment was particularly in the mornings and evenings that people that are I presume probably coming along Gates Mills Boulevard and don't want to go up to the light at Mayfield, wait for the light, turn down, hit the light at the intersection at Mayfield and River, and then continue on. And so they're coming through the center of our village. And so I have no idea if we see a significant increase in traffic in the morning and in the evening. To the extent that we do, my guess is it's probably above speed limit. And I think it's just warranted to, the street's pretty narrow. So I guess I just keep an eye on it. I don't know if you can even build any kind of statistics as to what, if this is 10 cars versus a normal 5 or 200 cars versus a normal 10 kind of thing. But, and I'm not, somebody said, why don't you put a speed bump up? I think that would be very interesting. We'd sure get some comments back if we did, but I'm not suggesting that, but just an observation that I hadn't particularly focused on.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of quick questions, Chief. Where are we on the traffic camera installations?
Well, I'm confident saying the traffic cameras will be up before the court's ready to take us on.
Before what?
The court's ready to take us on.
Yeah, we know that.
Yes.
I want to know how much.
So,
collecting data.
yes, so I can tell you that we received the invoice from First Energy that was passed on to GATSO to make payments. That was done about 2 weeks ago. First Energy is going to go ahead and, once they receive payment, they'll do what they have to do out there on 322, build their infrastructure. And then from that point, then GATSO will go ahead and take it over with their contractors. So there's startup things that they put the transformers up, things like that. So until they receive payment, they're not doing anything. But we were assured that that's in motion. They should be receiving payment shortly, and then we'll see some progress with that.
So when would you expect the cameras to be up and running?
Well, they'll be up. They won't be running. They may be running to collect data.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, it's hard to say because it's weather, and then, they say there could be a material shortage with the transformer base in.
Okay.
So, I wish I had a definitive answer for you. I can't. But believe me, I want this to happen more than anybody.
Sure.
I do. But I certainly hope that we'll see that in place by March. I love to see that.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to the data. 2 questions in the fire department report relate to motor vehicle crashes. Were either of them because of speeding?
Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure which ones you're
Well, there's one
referencing. Let me see if.
And one on the 3rd of December, which is
It's on the fire
on the
department.
fire report, and it's before the snow. So I'm just curious if it's speeding. It'd be interesting to know, and what happened.
Let me look into those tomorrow, and I'll send you an email.
Thank
on
you
that.
very much. And then finally, I see there were over 3,000 house checks in December. I can't even imagine 3,000 house checks. That's bigger than I've ever seen before.
Well, a lot of people go out of town, certainly,
I
and those are, sometimes they're being checked 3. It just depends on the call volume, what the officers are doing. We try to pick up, we really focus on the house checks around the holidays.
I'm trying to figure out in my own head what proportion of time patrolmen spend on these house
We
trips.
put a lot of miles on these cars. We really do. They rack up a lot of miles.
But you go slowly down driveways, so the miles don't, it's the minutes that count.
Right. Right.
So Chief, kind of adding on or to that question, I was thinking during the storms about the people, the elderly people in the village, the people that you do regular checks on. And I was also thinking there might be adult children who are calling in from other places about mom or dad. So tell us about what that was like during the storm. Were you doing more of those calls or checking in on the same number of people who are kind of on the list anyway?
Not a huge uptick with that. I mean, there's probably a few more, over the holidays like that, but, we have several snowbirds down here and, they go out of town. So our house watch list grows tremendously, that time of the year, Thanksgiving on. So, it's a pattern we've seen for years down here. So, not out of the ordinary at all, but, we feel it's our primary focus down here. And
So it was more house checks than.
more house checks.
than
Yeah, we'll get occasional welfare
elderly.
checks. Yeah, they happen, but, nothing
Yeah,
that you're gonna,
Okay, all
see a huge uptick in now.
right, thank you.
Is there any update on the call center?
The dispatch center, Chip, you may want to
No, I don't have any, I'm not involved anymore with task force is now dissolved, so I'm not involved anymore. So I don't know.
I don't have any information for you now.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is Service Department, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. You should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about roasters.
It was around.
About my report.
It was around Christmas.
Yeah,
Yeah, you guys are getting a lot of miles out of this.
yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Be careful, Craig, you're gonna get another calendar, appliance calendar. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. If not, that concludes my report.
Salt's building up.
Yeah, how much room do you have in your garage? So,
Thank you.
And Dave, quick question, no damage to water pipes, anything in the village due to the extreme cold we had?
no.
Okay.
No.
Don't
Thank you.
talk about it.
Well, I remember one question I was going to ask Fire Chief was, how does freezing cause a fire?
We haven't had his report yet.
I'm sorry. He's up, sorry.
All right, thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of the fire department report for December. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
That was my question.
You are probably referencing where we had a fire alarm that shorted out a smoke detector. And we got a fire alarm because of it.
Fire alarm due to water from a frozen pipe.
Yeah, we've actually had that a number of times in the village. We've been called out, the fire department's been called out not only to commercial, but residential properties where a water line has broken, run across the ceiling. And that first drop point happens to be a smoke detector, gets in there, shorts it out. You know, so it's actually worked out that we've saved a lot of property from water damage because we went for a fire alarm there. You know, so I wasn't present for last month's council meeting. Had COVID, don't recommend it. If you haven't had it, don't get it. But if you had any questions on the November, I'd be happy to answer those or the December. Seeing none. That concludes the fire department report.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, next on the agenda is ordinance number 2022-27.
And I
Great.
want to keep this tabled. We got a pretty full agenda today. We'll discuss this at the February meeting.
Okay, tabled. Next is ordinance 2023-1. Craig?
Yes, this is some background on this. So roughly a year ago, excuse me, we passed the ordinance for the safety cameras, effectively establishing tiers for fines. After the Supreme Court ruling in May, June timeframe, there were additional costs that were effectively imposed by the court. And the court is charging now a per citation charge. And that's mandated by the Supreme Court, and that is whether the fine is paid or not. So that's an advance payment that the village is required to remit to the court for those charges. And so what we have done, this was discussed in the safety committee back, I believe, in the July or August meeting, and approved by the safety committee, was to change the first tier. And you'll see on the back page, that first tier, that's 10 to 19 miles an hour, rather than that being $100 fine, that will now be $135 fine. And so that is effectively to cover the additional court imposed costs for those fines. And it is assumed, and it's a position of the safety committee and the chief, that the vast majority of the fines will be in that first tier. And so the decision was made that we did not want to change the other two tiers. The 20 to 29 miles an hour over the speed limit is $200. then 30 miles an hour or more over the speed limit is a $300 fine. It's just changing that first tier. Then there is, I noticed a typo here on the second paragraph. The second whereas, second line, it says the violation of 10 to 15 miles per hour. That should be 10 to 19 miles per hour. And so that is, it's accurate on the chart, but the ordinance says 10 to 15 miles per hour. And yeah, so this was done in January of 2022. So this is effectively a year later, and there will be another ordinance coming through at probably at some point here in the next few months to cover some of the contract amendments with GATSO as a result of now the court being involved in some of the procedures and process changes that will need to be reflected in the new contract. And so there will be a contract amendment that will come back through council. And I've mentioned that before, but we thought we're getting close on some things, particularly with the construction of the towers, that the cameras will go on, or the bases rather, that we would bring this in for council. So we need to approve the change in fine for just the first tier going to $135 from $100.
Now, are we being charged if somebody incurred $100 fine, incurred a fine from 10 to 19 miles an hour tomorrow, we'd get charged $35 whether or not they paid?
Correct.
It's already in effect.
It's already in effect.
So
right.
do we need to
Yes.
suspend the
Well,
rules?
Well, it's really 25, right? Yeah. So the fine is $25.
But we got to cover those that
Cover
don't
those
ever pay anything.
Correct. Right.
So do you want to suspend the rules?
Yes, I don't see. Chief, you have a comment?
Just so everybody understands, so it's not going to change any portion of what GATSO receives.
Correct. Right. This
So-
is right. The village is receiving this before the split occurs. So GATSO will not share in this increased fine amount.
Well, then this has nothing to, this doesn't go into effect until GATSO cameras are in effect. So we have no reason to suspend the rules.
That,
This is just to get in place for the eventual.
that's correct.
Oh, so
Correct.
there's no.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason. We've already approved this once. I don't see any reason with having 3 readings. I think it's fine. I don't know that there's any big rush to approve it. And if there is, we can always approve it next month. So I'll put it on first reading.
Be reminded that this does not go into effect until 30 days after passage.
Okay.
So take that into consideration.
Well, as a practical matter, it can't go into effect until we have the cameras issuing citations. can it?
Yeah. So I think we're okay.
It can be in place. It just wouldn't be.
It can be first.
Wouldn't be
reading.
administered.
Yeah, first reading.
Quick observation, really. I thought we were here to catch the really bad guys, the ones who are going really fast. I think, I don't see why you wouldn't charge them an extra $35 as well. I mean, they won't do it again.
That's kind of how I feel.
And I thought our focus was going to be on the high speed.
Well, it is. I mean, we believe $300 would be a very significant fine.
Well, 335 would be even better if money is the objective. And if safety is the objective, it might be the best answer. This is not a business, is it? We're trying here to set a fine that will affect behavior. Our costs
Correct.
are almost irrelevant.
Right. But we also, and there's no right or wrong to any of this. I guess I look at it like we want to,
It's difficult.
it's difficult. I mean, would somebody pay at 300 and they wouldn't at 335? I mean, who knows? I mean, so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Next is resolution 2023-2. Sandra?
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a grant agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources for funding for the village's project for Americans with Disabilities Act improvements at the Village Community House. So the state of Ohio legislature has approved monies through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to communities. And we've been offered a grant in the amount of $39,200 to renovate the restrooms on the lower level to make them handicap accessible and to install automatic doors that go from the building outside around the back where the handicap entrances.
So this covers the complete cost of the renovations, no additional cost from the village.
It's
To cover this.
to my knowledge, we submitted the cost that we expected it would be the total
Okay.
cost.
It's not.
It's not?
No, because we got 30,000 from the Cuyahoga County that goes toward this. There's two areas that are being done, the bathrooms.
Well, this is specifically for this building.
Right, exactly. Right.
So is it more than 39,000 to do this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There's the,
ODNR keeps, it was 40, but they keep $800 for administrative.
Okay.
And this actually came out of the biannual capital budget.
Oh, great work.
Yeah.
I think this is fantastic.
Okay,
So Janet, just to clarify, for the benefit of everyone, the 39,002 for the restrooms for this building are through this grant. The county money, District 6 money is for renovating the bathrooms attached to the service department.
right.
Two separate projects.
Oh,
Thank you.
I consider. it.
good clarification.
Any other questions?
Are the, in addition to making them ADA or, account for people with disabilities, are the restrooms going to be improved? Are they going to look nicer?
Made
So, I
of,
mean,
made of gold,
Yes.
okay.
40 grand.
Have you been downstairs?
Well, that's my point. That, so this will be a lot, won't be an embarrassment to
Yes.
the village. Okay.
I'm gonna move to suspend the
Second.
rules.
Anton.
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon.
yes,
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
move to approve.
Second.
Anton.
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon.
Yes.
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, next is resolution 2023-3, CHIP.
A resolution authorizing and directing the transfer of certain sums from the general fund to the capital improvement fund, mayor's fund, wastewater fund, and police pension fund. And this is all just normal procedure now that the budget's in place and funding those accounts. Janet, I didn't get a chance to talk to you, but so this is procedural, but we want to do it now to set up. I mean, should I suspend the rules? Okay, I move to suspend the rules.
second,
Anton.
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon.
Yes.
Press. Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
And now I move to approve resolution 2023-3.
second,
Anton.
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon.
yes,
Press. Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is resolution 2023-4, CHIP.
This is a resolution authorizing a change order to the contract with Roniak Paving, Inc. for the village's 2022 road program and declaring an emergency. And Chris, you think we can hold this? Just what you said something to me, or Steve, what? Do we want to approve this now or?
Oh, yeah, no, this is not gonna change. So this is, this is a final negotiated amount, with Roniak that started at a larger number and negotiated it down to that.
Okay. All right. So I guess we ought to proceed, I guess. I mean, I don't think we're going to delay it for any purpose. The question is, do I want to suspend the rules?
Yep.
Because otherwise. we're
After
3 months
the work
out.
is done, we have to
Okay.
pay them.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Anton.
Yes.
Allworder.
Yes.
Deacon.
yes,
Press. Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Now I move to approve 2023-4.
second,
I've got a quick question, Chris. Extra work on Hawthorne Farms to address hazardous intersection conditions. Like, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
No, this
Is-
came up while we were in the middle of the program for the next couple years out. There was a rapid deterioration of the one lane, at like half of one lane right at the intersection that had happened as a result of water and traffic. And so we got in there and repaved the first 125 feet of the intersection.
okay.
in order to- Because all the traffic was being driven in the middle of the road.
Okay, so that wasn't putting additional workers out there to direct traffic or something, that's what that's,
It's
okay,
sunk.
okay,
Yeah.
fair enough, thank you.
to make a comment before we vote. I think we're all a little bit embarrassed by this. And I think the next order of business should be, what were the lessons we've learned from this experience and how will it influence how we do things in the future? Not only how we do them, but how we plan them financially and the rest of it. So I think it's valid. This is a learning moment. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, so just to build on that, Chris is going to, and is a process of looking at the roads, the ones that are failed, the ones that are in poor shape, trying to, some of the conditions around the roads that may increase the likelihood that when they open up the road, they're going to find they got to do this extra work. And we'll put a provision in accordingly. Secondly, one of the other problems here is that, and it took a while because we wanted to get all of those videos, if you recall, and laying everything out. And so the work again didn't get started till late summer into the fall and then with weather. So Chris is going to come for authorization in February to go out for bid. And in April, we will hopefully then have a much clearer picture of what we want to do for the roads this year. But it'll be a little different than where we thought before getting hit with this. Is that a fair summary, Chris? So
So
have to move. I think I already moved.
you moved and we had a second.
Yes.
Anton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press, Steinberg.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Wolf.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next is any other council matters?
I've got one little wrinkle. People are making the assumption that we're going to use the conservation funds to partially fund the Mayfield Road culvert work. Has council approved that? Have we discussed it? I'm not sure it's the highest and best use of the conservation funds. It may be compliant with the language, but I don't think it's compliant with the expectations of villagers. So I just wondered if it's been approved already. If it has, I don't remember. Or is it for a discussion we should be having, which I think it is. Not now, but at some point.
For the benefit of those that aren't familiar with the numbers, and I don't have the sheet in front of me, so I'll do this from memory. The Mayfield Road culvert is somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000, as is our last guess. The funding has been put into certain sequences. The first 220,000 will come from the District 6 money, which is the capital improvements, I call it the Jack Sharon money. The next 116,000, whatever is in the ARPA funds. Janet, can you find the number real quickly? And if the project was only $400,000, there'd be very little need to come with much from the conservancy funds. If the project is at the higher end, then we have planned to use $75,000 of the village's portion of land conservancy. So just so we have some perspective about what we're talking about, it could be as little as zero and it could be as high as 75,000.
That's my recollection.
What does that mean if it goes in over the high estimate, that you'll go even further into the conservation money?
I think we never talked about that, so I think that would be I think there'd be a very good conversation at that time.
I'm sort of with David.
Very unlikely, but again, we've seen an unlikely thing today, so.
We might be legally, under the language of the levy, we might be legally able to charge off the 75,000 for the culvert. But it certainly isn't what I had in mind and what I think voters had in mind when they approved the levy.
Fair points for both. I think we have followed what the letter of the law allows us to do, and what frankly 75% of the voters that voted yes agreed to do, which is to use it for wastewater management. I'm sorry, for stormwater management.
Not explicitly. They approved it for conservation. So
It's not just the culvert itself, there's also channel improvements that are going upstream and downstream from the inlet and outlet of the culvert. So if there is any utilization of conservancy money, we can make the argument that money is being dedicated to those portions of the work that are outside the harder infrastructure pipe work and more related to stream restoration, channel improvements up and downstream from the culvert.
this is just an example of how we might be applying these conservation funds in the future. So I don't want to talk about it specifically in the context of the Mayfield culvert. I want to talk about it conceptually. for that kind of project, because I think we scratch our heads, we can come up with more conservation-oriented projects than fixing a culvert.
Yeah, I think this is a project we would have done anyway.
Yeah.
If we didn't have those levy funds, we'd still be doing the Mayfield Road culvert.
So this is the conversation we should have in a more organized way, I think. But they're the issues. Yeah.
Once we have the figures of what it's going to be, I suggest we discuss it.
Thank you.
That probably goes to the village engineer and Dave in terms of how they prioritize getting estimates for that. You guys have a month? So Mayor, it's probably a couple weeks to spec it out and then a couple weeks to get bids, right? Dave, Chris? So
Want to fill?
month and a half?
Is that all then? That's got a lot.
Well, let me try one other angle here. We now have these conservation levy funds. We didn't have them before. It amounts to a lot of money. It's what, 500,000 over the next 5 years. Why don't we have some kind of a plan for what we're going to do with this money? We're fortunate to have it. Maybe we ought to be planting trees to follow on what Nat said. I'd feel better about doing something like that, but it's going to make the place better and is consistent with what everybody seems to want, as opposed to just, use it here and there to do things we were going to do anyway.
So
That's
maybe
also-
we need to understand the stream restoration and that aspect of it and what the goal would be. Might be helpful because that does sound like good conservation from
That's
a
right.
non-expert.
That's right for this project, but
The request authorization to bid, I'll present the plan.
there you go.
Okay.
Exactly
There you go.
different pieces of parts are.
Perfect.
So as I said, this is
But-
just one project, but this is going to be a recurring conversation.
No, it is, I think it is a good idea to have that discussion. For example, we talking about a tree canopy program with the Land Conservancy. That's going to involve some funding. So, we should have a budget
Exactly.
anticipated with priorities.
Exactly.
And certainly stormwater management, working on culverts could be a portion of that.
Could be.
But we could talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Any other matters? Business from the audience? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes?
Press, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Beth, as only Carrie or Stanley. Stanley texts me in the middle of the meeting. If time permits, buy $10